Hi everyone, Titano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Flaming Lips album, American Head. This is the new full-length album from famed neo-psych outfit, the Flaming Lips. They are also now approaching 4 decades as a band, so their reputation as a force within psychedelic and experimental music kind of precedes them at this point, especially during the 90s and 2000s, where they peaked creatively and commercially. Now, I've said this before, and I will say it again, the 2010s have proven not to be the best decade for the Flaming Lips discography. It's like after Embryonic, the band just snapped and started dropping one incredibly indulgent batch of originals, covers, or collaborations after another. But even if the 2010s were low on critically acclaimed albums from the Lips, this decade can still be appreciated for being so wild and creatively unpredictable. I am hoping American Head and 2020 do mark a new chapter for the band, though, because personally, I think this is the best Flaming Lips album in years, and I mean years, which I didn't necessarily expect either because all of the teasers to this thing were so low-key. Their full emotional force didn't really hit after an isolated listen or two. But American Head in totality is a powerhouse of psychedelic melancholy, with the band really going back to some of the ideas that have made their classic material so popular, grabbing those 60s psych tropes and updating them so creatively with texturally surreal production and odd songwriting. Now, the band is going back to a point where maybe a few of the tracks here are a little too typical for Flaming Lips, like Dinosaurs on the Mountain. You could argue American Head is one of the band's least experimental releases over the past decade, but even on a relatively clean-cut series of songs, the Flaming Lips are still more adventurous and colorful than most. There's also a consistent lyrical focus on drugs, death, family, living on the edge that makes this thing a pretty thematic listen too. A depressing listen as well, as the band just nails you with one swelling, sad wall of instrumentation after another. Seriously, there are portions of this record that during a headphone listen especially just sound like the world melting away around me as I fall into a multicolored abyss. Like this thing with the binky? Yes, the binky meme, essentially. Not to reduce my listens of this album down to a joke, because it is an experience, whether it's the eerie and entrancing opener, Will You Return, which is powered by some very simple pianos, Wayne Coyne's trademark cartoony cracked falsetto, as well as some subtle touches of psychedelic effects, or Mother Please Don't Be Sad, which is one of a few narrative cuts on the record where we have our protagonist calling out to a motherly figure as they are dying and crossing over into the great beyond over a wall of soaring strings and gentle pianos. Post this, we have a perfect transition into the track When We Die, When We're High, which is just a very complimentary instrumental jam with a driving groove. The track after that, Assassins of Youth, then becomes a meditation on that death, and also death in a more figurative sense, death or the loss of one's youth or a part of oneself. With American Head, you're essentially listening to an entire story just unfold before your ears, which does remind me of the more narrative-based approach the band had on their last LP, King's Mouth, an idea that I'm glad they didn't abandon. But by comparison here with American Head, the story being told is so much more personal and heart-wrenching. There is the ending where things get pretty spiritual, in a sense. God and the Policeman, a chilling duet featuring Casey Musgraves, which is set to angelic vocal harmonies and bells. Then there is the finisher, My Religion Is You, which does tie into the overall narrative of the album very nicely, but simultaneously it's a commentary on religion itself and finding the power of faith and love and hope in other people, as opposed to a belief in the divine or an organization built around that, with lyrics like, if being a Christian is your thing, then own it, friend, don't phone it in, I don't need no religion, you're all I need, etc., etc. Then there's more material material storytelling on the rest of the record about drugs and escaping a less than ideal reality, with some occasional implications that the American dream, in a sense, is a farce, whether that be at the movies on QUAALUDES or You and Me, Sellin' Weed, which is an intimate slow burner where the protagonist pretty much finds some bliss in living a very simple life selling drugs. The Flaming Lips' subtle entrances into more electronic spaces on this record are a treat too, whether that's on the closer or the song Brother I, where the instrumental palette is made up of these stuttering tones, swelling bass notes, a slow driving beat, and the kind of vocal processing you might find on like a Kanye record. It really is like listening to a neo-psych Yeezus. This, of course, is a nice change-up in the instrumental palette on the record, but generally the flow of this album is very smooth and versatile, with its mix of ballads, stories, interludes, and an abstract meditation or two. So overall, I loved this one. I think Wayne and company really came through with an emotionally stunning project this time around. The whole thing, in my opinion, has greatness that speaks for itself. Moving, well-structured songs, thoughtful narrative, very elegant and mind-bending instrumentation that reinforces the storytelling really well. And while the presentation of the record is theatrical in a sense, the production is still somewhat unorthodox, just like it should be on a good Flaming Lips album. There are plenty of gorgeous and resonant sounds throughout this album, but they're all fed through this somewhat fuzzy and dirty lens, the focus of which varies from song to song, but the Flaming Lips trademark sound is never really out of view. Feeling a strong 8 to a light 9 on this one. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like, please subscribe, and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Flaming Lips, forever.